The whisper didn't start loud. It didn't need to. He's been transferred. That was all it took. The words slipped through the corridors of Orion Interstellar Academy like a silent alarm, bouncing from one species to another, mutating with every retelling. Transferred. From where? The pause. Earth. Everything stopped. Claws froze midair. Antennae stiffened. Even the low hum of the anti-gravity panels seemed to dim, as if the building itself was listening. No, that's not possible. It has to be a mistake. It's not, someone muttered. I saw the registry update myself. A ripple of unease spread across the common hall. A small, translucent creature named Veery clung tighter to the underside of a floating bench, his gelatinous body quivering. Earth, that's a death world, he whispered, his voice warbling like a disturbed frequency. Why would they send one here? They wouldn't, snapped Krail, a towering reptilian with plated armor scales. Unless they had no other choice. That didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. Nearby, a trio of slender, four-armed students huddled together, their eyes darting nervously toward the entrance doors as if expecting something to burst through at any moment. I heard they breathe toxic air, one of them said. I heard they enjoy it, another replied. No, listen, a third interrupted, voice dropping to a hush. My cousin studies xenobiology. He said humans evolved on a planet where the ground shakes, the sky burns, and the water itself can kill you. Silence. Then someone else added quietly, and they survived it. That was the part no one could ignore. Across the hall, perched high on a metallic beam, a thin, insect-like student clicked his mandibles nervously. How strong are they, really? Krail didn't answer immediately. His heavy gaze shifted toward the far wall, where a digital display flickered with incoming transfer data. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, strong enough that their own world couldn't kill them. A collective shudder passed through the room. Wait, Veery stammered, his body rippling in panic. This is just rumors, right? Exaggerations? Every species sounds scary if you tell the story wrong. No one responded, because deep down, they all knew it wasn't just rumors. There were records, data, statistics that didn't make sense. Humans had one of the highest survival adaptation rates in the known galaxy. Environments that would cripple other species barely slowed them down. Their pain tolerance was abnormal. Their endurance, unnatural. And worst of all, they didn't seem to realize it. That's the dangerous part, muttered a voice from the back. All heads turned. It was Instructor Draxon. No one had noticed him enter. The massive, dual-spined instructor stood with his arms folded, his expression unreadable. His species was known for their composure under pressure. Right now, even he looked tense. They don't act like predators, Draxon continued slowly. They act like everything is normal. That sent a colder wave of fear through the room than anything else. Because predators you could prepare for. Something that didn't even recognize its own danger? That was unpredictable. That's worse, Veery squeaked. A low murmur of agreement followed. What class? Someone asked. Draxon hesitated. Just for a second. Physical training. The reaction was immediate. What? You can't be serious. That's a controlled environment. It's supposed to be safe. The room erupted into overlapping voices, panic finally breaking through whatever restraint they had left. A death worlder in gym class? They'll tear the equipment apart. What if they don't understand the rules? What if we don't survive the warm-up? Enough. Draxon's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Instant silence. You will maintain order, he said firmly. This is an academy of unity. Every species is treated equally. Even them, someone whispered. Draxon didn't answer directly. Instead, his gaze shifted toward the entrance. They'll be here shortly. That was when the fear truly settled in. Not rumors. Not stories. Not secondhand myths. Immediate. Coming. Veery slowly slid further up the beam, pressing himself flat as if distance alone could save him. Krail cracked his neck, though whether it was preparation or anxiety, even he didn't know. Across the hall, Students began spacing themselves out instinctively, creating invisible boundaries, each one silently hoping they wouldn't be the closest when it happened. No one spoke now. No one moved. Every eye was locked on the entrance. Waiting. Listening. And then, a soft mechanical hiss. The doors began to open. The doors hadn't fully opened yet, but no one breathed. The thin line of light spilling through the gaps stretched across the polished floor like a blade, inching wider, slower than it should have. Or maybe it just felt that way. Fear had a way of distorting time. Veery squeezed his eyes shut. Don't look, he whispered to himself, his gelatinous form trembling so violently he nearly lost his grip on the beam. Below him, Krail didn't move. Didn't blink. Predators faced danger head-on. That was what his instincts told him. But instinct had never been tested against something like this. Not a human. Not a Death Worlder. They say, a quiet voice started from somewhere in the back, that on their planet, even the plants fight back. A few heads turned slightly, just enough to acknowledge the speaker, not enough to break focus from the door. A tall, slender being with glass-like skin continued, voice barely above a whisper. Carnivorous vegetation. Vines that constrict. Thorns that inject toxins. And that's just the plants, someone else added. Another voice, shaky. I heard their oceans are worse. That got attention. They hide things in there, the speaker continued. Creatures larger than transport ships. Teeth longer than your arm. Some don't even need to see you. They feel movement in the water and... He snapped his fingers. A sharp, sudden sound. Several students flinched. Gone. Veery let out a tiny, involuntary squeak. That's not even the worst part, Krail said quietly. His voice carried. Not loud, but heavy. Everyone listened. The worst part is that humans don't avoid those things. The pause. They challenge them. That landed. But what do you mean, challenge? Someone asked. Krail's jaw tightened slightly. They hunt predators. For sport. A collective chill spread through the hall. No. Yes. They climb unstable mountains, knowing they can fall. They swim in those oceans. They walk into storms. Storms? Veery croaked. Krail nodded once. Storms powerful enough to tear cities apart. Winds that rip structures from the ground. Lightning that strikes without warning. And they just live there? Someone whispered. They call it weather. Silence. Pure, suffocating silence. From the far side of the room, a floating, spherical student slowly drifted backward, as if trying to put more distance between himself and the still opening doors. That's not a species, he said weakly. That's a survival anomaly. Another voice joined in, more frantic now. My instructor told me humans can keep going even when their bodies are damaged. Broken bones, internal injuries, they just keep moving. That's impossible. It's documented. They feel pain, don't they? Yes. Then why don't they stop? No one had an answer for that. And that made it worse. Veery peeked one eye open, immediately regretting it as the door slid another inch wider. They shouldn't be here, he whispered. This academy isn't built for something like that. A low hum of agreement followed. This is a learning environment. A safe zone. We train to improve, not to survive. Krail's tail lashed once against the floor. Exactly. For the first time, there was something uncertain in his voice. If even half of what we know is true, then we're not prepared for this. Another student, smaller, with delicate limbs and glowing veins, spoke up hesitantly. What if they don't realize it? All eyes turned. What? The student swallowed. What if to them all of this is normal? That idea sank deeper than anything else. Because it reframed everything. Not a monster. Not a predator. Something far more unsettling. Someone who didn't even know they were dangerous. Krail exhaled slowly. That's exactly the problem. Above, Veery clung tighter. So they won't hold back? They might not even know how. The doors were almost fully open now. Just a narrow gap remained. The light spilling in had grown brighter, stretching across the room like a spotlight waiting for its subject. No one spoke anymore. No more theories. No more whispers. Because now, it wasn't about what they heard. It was about what they were about to see. Instructor Draxon stepped forward slightly, his posture rigid. Even he hadn't moved to the center like usual. Even he was keeping his distance. That alone sent a fresh wave of unease through the students. If he wasn't confident, what chance did they have? The final inch of the door slid open. A soft click echoed. Complete silence. Dozens of eyes locked onto the entrance. He should have looked terrifying. Massive. Unnatural. Something that matched the horror they had built in their minds. Something that justified the fear. Something that made sense. Instead, a figure stepped in. And for a moment, no one understood what they were looking at. "That's it," someone whispered. The figure paused just inside the doorway. Not towering. Not monstrous. Not glowing with power or radiating danger. Normal. And somehow, that was even worse. Because if this was a human, then everything they had heard, everything they feared, everything they imagined, it was all contained inside something that looked completely ordinary. Viri's voice came out in a faint, horrified whisper. "There's no way." Krail didn't respond. He couldn't. Because for the first time since the rumors started, he wasn't sure what scared him more. The legends, or the reality standing quietly in front of them. For a long moment, no one moved. No alarms blared. No systems reacted. No sudden display of overwhelming force shattered the room. The human just stood there. Quiet. Looking around like he was slightly unsure if he had walked into the right place. "This is the gym hall, right?" he asked. His voice wasn't deep or threatening. It wasn't sharp or commanding. It was normal. Casual. And that single fact sent a ripple of confusion through the entire room. Viri blinked rapidly from his spot on the beam. "Why is it talking like that?" he whispered. "Like what?" someone murmured back. "Like it's not about to kill us all." No one laughed. Because no one was sure he wouldn't. The human took a few steps forward, the soft sound of his shoes tapping against the polished floor echoing far louder than it should have. Every step felt heavy, not because of weight, but because of attention. Dozens of eyes tracked him, measured him, analyzed him, and found nothing. No visible weapons. No claws. No fangs. No natural armor. Just soft skin. 2 arms. 2 legs. Balanced posture. It didn't make sense. Krail narrowed his eyes slightly. "This is wrong," he muttered under his breath. "What do you mean?" asked the glowing vein student beside him. Krail didn't look away from the human. If this is a species that evolved on a death world, then where are its defenses? That question spread quickly. Yes, where are they? It looks fragile. Too fragile. Maybe it's deceptive. Of course it's deceptive. Everything about this is deceptive. Viri made a small distressed sound. "I don't like this. I don't like this at all." The human scratched the back of his head slightly, glancing around at the silent, unmoving group. "Hi." No one responded. Not a single voice. Not even a greeting. The silence stretched. Awkward. Thick. Almost painful. Instructor Draxon finally stepped forward, his movements controlled, measured. "Class," he said firmly, though there was a faint tightness in his tone, "this is your new transfer student." The pause. "Introduce yourself." All eyes snapped back to the human. The human gave a small nod. "Yeah, but Jack Torrin." He hesitated briefly as if expecting something. A reaction. A response. Anything. Nothing came. "From Earth," he added. That did it. A visible flinch rippled through the room. Several students physically stepped back. One of the floating species drifted upward instinctively, putting more distance between himself and the floor, as if proximity alone was dangerous. Viri nearly lost his grip on the beam again. "He said it so casually," he whispered in horror. "Like it's normal." "It is normal to him," someone replied weakly. And that was the problem. Jack looked around again, clearly noticing the reaction now. "Did I say something wrong?" he asked. No answer. Just staring. Unblinking. Unmoving. Krail finally spoke, his voice low but steady. You are human. Jack glanced at him and nodded. Yeah. Another pause. Krail's tail shifted slightly. You come from a Class 9 hostile environment. Jack blinked. I guess? It's just Earth. Just Earth. The words echoed in the room like something absurdly out of place. Earth. Veery repeated faintly. Jack shrugged a little. It's not that bad. But several students physically recoiled. That's a lie, someone whispered. It has to be. No species survives that level of environmental hostility and calls it not that bad. Unless, another voice added slowly, they're adapted to it. Silence. That explanation made too much sense. And made things far worse. Instructor Draxon cleared his throat, regaining control of the situation, at least on the surface. We will proceed as normal, he said firmly. This is a physical training class. All students will participate equally. A wave of unease followed that statement. Equally? There was no such thing as equal anymore. Not with this variable in the room. Positions, Draxon ordered. The class hesitated. Then slowly, reluctantly, they began to spread out. But something had changed. The formation wasn't structured anymore. It was strategic. Every student adjusted their position carefully, subtly, creating distance. Escape routes. Invisible lines drawn across the floor. And at the center of it all. He looked down briefly, then around again, noticing how no one stood near him. A small frown formed. Am I in the wrong spot? No one answered. Krail deliberately took 2 steps to the side. The glowing vein student shifted behind him. Veery climbed even higher. Within seconds, a clear circle had formed around Jack. Empty. Untouched. Like a silent warning zone. Jack looked at it. Then back at them. Okay, he muttered under his breath. Instructor Draxon clapped his hands once. The sharp sound echoed. Warm-up routine, he announced. Standard sequence. No one moved immediately. Because no one wanted to start. Not first. Not near him. Not in front of him. Draxon's gaze hardened slightly. Now. That did it. The class began moving. Slowly at first. Then more uniformly. Stretching. Adjusting. Beginning the routine they had done countless times before. Except, this time wasn't normal. Every movement was distracted. Every glance was sideways. Every second, they were aware of him. Watching. Waiting. Expecting something to happen. Anything. But Jack? Jack simply rolled his shoulders and started stretching. Casually. Like nothing was wrong. Like nothing was different. Like he hadn't just walked into a room full of beings who thought he might be the most dangerous thing they had ever encountered. He bent forward. Touched his toes. Straightened up. Rotated his arms. Loose. Relaxed. Effortless. No tension. No hesitation. No awareness of the storm surrounding him. Veery stared. Why does it look so easy? He whispered. Krail didn't answer. Because he was watching something else. Something subtle. Something that didn't match the rest. Jack wasn't straining. Not even slightly. Not even at the beginning. And that was the first real sign. That maybe everything they had heard wasn't exaggerated at all. The warm-up had started, but no one was actually focused on it. Not really. Every stretch was distracted. Every movement slightly off. Every pair of eyes drifting back to him. The human. The death worlder. Standing in the middle of the gym like he didn't realize he was the center of gravity for the entire room. He reached down again, stretching his legs, then rolled his shoulders with a quiet exhale. Still calm. Still casual. Still completely normal. That's not right, Veery whispered, his voice trembling from above. It's supposed to look dangerous. Krail's gaze narrowed. No, he said quietly. It's not. What? If it looked dangerous, Krail continued, we'd understand it. That thought settled heavy. Because he was right. There was nothing to understand. No visible threat. No obvious power. Just a being that, by all known logic, shouldn't exist in such a harmless form. Instructor Draxon paced slowly along the edge of the room, observing. Even he couldn't ignore it now. The imbalance. The disruption. Not physical, but psychological. Focus on your form, Draxon called out sharply. A few students flinched and quickly corrected their posture. But it didn't last. Because Jack moved again. He twisted slightly, stretching his torso, smooth, controlled, effortless. No shaking. No resistance. No strain. Crail noticed immediately. He's not hitting any limit, he muttered. The glowing vein student beside him blinked. What do you mean? Watch closely. They did. Jack extended his arms behind him, interlocking his fingers and pulling back in a stretch that forced several nearby students to wince just from looking at it. For most species in the room, that range of motion required effort. Warm-up progression. Jack did it like it was nothing. Then he held it. No tremor. No breath hitch. No sign of discomfort. That's not a warm-up, someone whispered. That's peak flexibility. And he's treating it like the beginning. A quiet wave of unease spread again. Viri's voice came faintly from above. Maybe that is his normal? No one liked that answer. Jack released the stretch and shook out his arms, glancing around again. He noticed it now. The distance. The space. The way no one came near him. Do I smell or something? He muttered under his breath. A few students froze. Crail blinked once. What? Jack scratched the side of his head. I mean, everyone's kinda staying back. No one responded. Because no one knew how to respond. Tell him the truth? We think you might accidentally destroy us. That didn't seem like a safe conversation. Instructor Draxon stepped in quickly. Maintain your positions, he said firmly. Jack gave a small shrug. All right. And just like that, he went back to stretching. No suspicion. No tension. Just acceptance. That's worse, Viri whispered. Why is that worse? Someone asked. Because he doesn't even notice, Viri said. Or he does and doesn't care. Crail's eyes stayed locked on Jack. No, he said slowly. He notices. The others looked at him. And? Crail exhaled quietly. And he doesn't think it matters. That realization hit differently. Because that meant one thing. This wasn't intimidation. This wasn't dominance. This was just baseline. Draxon clapped his hands again, louder this time. Transition to mobility drills. The class shifted positions. More movement. More motion. More chances to observe. And more chances for things to go wrong. Jack stepped forward slightly to follow the drill pattern. And 3 students immediately adjusted their paths to avoid crossing too close to him. The movement was subtle. Instinctive. But noticeable. Jack paused for half a second. Just enough to register it. Then he continued. Okay, he murmured again. Crail caught that. He's adapting, he said under his breath. What? He's already adjusting to our behavior. That's normal. No, Crail replied, eyes narrowing. That's fast. Too fast. Jack followed the drill. Side steps, rotations, controlled footwork. Simple. Basic. Routine. For everyone else. It wasn't so simple anymore. Because now, they had something to compare against. And the comparison wasn't fair. Not even close. Jack moved cleanly. Efficiently. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Like his body already understood every action before he made it. That's practiced, someone said. But he just got here. That doesn't look like learning. That looks like instinct. Viri slowly slid down the beam just enough to get a better look, then immediately regretted it as Jack shifted direction suddenly. Viri froze. Did he just predict that movement? He whispered. Crail didn't respond. But he had seen it too. Jack wasn't reacting late. He wasn't correcting mistakes. He was moving, like there were no mistakes to correct. Instructor Draxon stopped pacing. For the first time since the class began, he stood completely still, watching, analyzing. Even he couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't just difference. This was imbalance. The system designed for relative equality suddenly had an outlier that broke every assumption. Enough. Draxon's voice cut through the room again. End warm-up. Relief spread instantly. Subtle. The tension didn't disappear, but it shifted, because everyone knew what came next. The real exercises. The real test. And if this was just the warm-up, no one wanted to imagine what came after. Jack rolled his shoulders once more, exhaling lightly. That's it, he said. The words were simple, harmless, but the effect was immediate. Several students stiffened. Krail's eyes narrowed again. That's it, he repeated quietly. Jack looked around. Yeah, that felt kinda short. But the word echoed in the room like a warning. Veery slowly backed up along the beam again. We're not ready for this, he whispered. And for once, no one disagreed. The moment the warm-up ended, the instructor didn't waste time. Circuit training, Instructor Varric announced, his voice echoing across the chamber. 10 stations. Strength, agility, endurance. Standard rotation. Standard, for everyone except him. A ripple of tension passed through the class. No one said it out loud, but they were all thinking the same thing. This is where it happens. The new student, the human, stepped forward casually, rolling his shoulders as if this was just another day. No dramatic entrance. No intimidation display. That somehow made it worse. The build-up to the first feat. The first station was simple. Too simple. A weighted lift, something every species could attempt at their own level. The heavier bars were usually left untouched, more symbolic than practical. Today, it changed. The human approached the rack and paused. He tilted his head slightly. Which one do I use? He asked. The nearest student froze. That one is fine, someone muttered, deliberately pointing to a moderate weight. No one wanted to see what would happen otherwise. The human nodded. Then, without hesitation, he reached past it and grabbed the heaviest bar. Execution, effortless dominance. For a split second, the entire room held its breath. This was it. The moment they'd all been dreading. He adjusted his grip. Lifted. Effortlessly. No strain. No shaking. No build-up. Twice. The bar moved like it weighed nothing. A quiet, rhythmic motion. Controlled. Casual. Like he was warming up. Reaction cascade, key viral element. Silence. What? Someone whispered. That's not possible. I couldn't even move that last cycle. Across the room, multiple students had completely stopped their own exercises. One dropped their equipment. Another forgot to breathe. A smaller creature near the back slowly backed away, as if distance might somehow protect them from what they were witnessing. He's not even trying, someone said, voice cracking. And that was the part that unsettled everyone the most. Escalation without aggression. The human set the bar down. Gently. No dramatic drop. No show of force. Just done. He glanced around. Is that it for this one? He asked. No answer. Not because they didn't hear him, but because no one knew how to respond. Instructor Varric stepped forward quickly, regaining control. Just move to the next station. His tone was firm, but his posture had changed. Slightly tighter, more alert. Even he hadn't expected that. Momentum across stations, montage effect. And then it continued. Station after station. Each one telling the same story in a different way. Agility course, he moved cleanly, efficiently, no wasted motion. Endurance run, while others slowed, he maintained the same pace. Balance test, perfect control, no hesitation. Not flashy. Not exaggerated. Just consistently beyond everyone else. The psychological shift. At first, the class watched in fear. Then confusion. Then something more complicated. Because the human wasn't acting like a threat. He wasn't competing aggressively, mocking others, showing off. If anything, he seemed unaware that anything unusual was happening. Why is he like this? One student whispered. He doesn't even realize. That's worse. Key viral mechanic. Normalization of the impossible. The human finished another station and lightly stretched his arms. That's a decent setup, he said casually. Decent. The word echoed in multiple minds at once. Decent? This wasn't decent. This was completely outside their understanding of physical limits. And yet, it was just average. Controlled suspense, no full reveal yet. Crucially, this phase does not show full power. Instead, it creates repeated small shocks, growing disbelief, layered reactions. Each action builds pressure without releasing it completely. The audience and characters begin asking, is this his limit? Or is he holding back? How much stronger could he be? Closing beat of Phase 5. By the time the circuit rotation ended, the room had changed. Physically, it was the same. Same equipment. Same layout. But the atmosphere? Completely different. Every student now kept one eye on the human. Not out of immediate fear, but out of uncertainty. Because now they knew. The stories weren't exaggerated. If anything, they had been understated. The human stood near the wall, relaxed, catching his breath just slightly for the first time. He looked around at the others. Hey, he said, friendly as ever, what's next? No one answered immediately. Because whatever came next, they knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. By now, the room had a rhythm. Not a comfortable one, but a tense, watchful silence that followed the human wherever he moved. Every station he completed left behind the same aftermath. Stunned faces, half-finished exercises, and a growing, uncomfortable realization. He wasn't slowing down. Trigger, pride breaks before fear. It couldn't last. That kind of imbalance never does. Near the center of the training floor, one of the larger students stepped forward. He wasn't the strongest in the class, but he was proud. And pride doesn't tolerate being quietly overshadowed. You, he said, voice firm but tight. Human. The room froze again. Not out of curiosity this time, but anticipation. This was the moment everyone had been expecting and hoping to avoid. Tension spike, all eyes on them. The human turned, mildly surprised. Yeah. No aggression. No irritation. Just simple acknowledgement. That made it worse. The challenger clenched his fists. You think you can just walk in here and outdo everyone like it's nothing? The pause. The human blinked. I'm just doing the exercises. That answer landed wrong. Very wrong. A ripple of murmurs spread. He's mocking him. He has to be. There's no way he's serious. Escalation through misunderstanding. The challenger stepped closer. You're not even trying, he growled. You're making a joke out of this. The human frowned slightly. No, You've been holding back. That was the accusation. The real one. And now it was out in the open. The entire class leaned in, physically or mentally. Because that question mattered. Was he holding back? Key viral hook, challenge issued. Fine, the challenger said, raising his voice. Let's make this simple. He pointed toward a nearby apparatus, a narrow elevated beam used for balance and coordination. The race. Across the beam. A few students gasped. Not because the challenge was extreme, but because of what it represented. This wasn't about the exercise anymore. This was about proving something. Human response, crucial tone control. The human looked at the beam, then back at the challenger. A small shrug. Okay. No hesitation. No build-up. No intimidation. Just agreement. That calm acceptance sent a wave of unease through the room. The attempt, build suspense first. You go first, the human added. The challenger stiffened, but nodded. He stepped onto the beam. Slowly, carefully. The room fell completely silent. Each step was deliberate, controlled. A test of balance, precision, and focus. Halfway across, a slight wobble. Guess. But he recovered, pushed forward, and finally reached the end. Not perfect, but solid, respectable. To expectation peak. All eyes turned to the human. This was it. Now they would see. Was he truly superior? Or had it all been exaggerated perception? Even the instructor didn't interrupt. Execution. Clean, effortless, decisive. The human stepped onto the beam. No pause. No adjustment. movement. Fast. But not reckless. Precise. Controlled. Every step placed exactly where it needed to be. No wobble. No correction. No hesitation. He crossed the entire length in seconds. And stepped off like it was nothing. Impact moment, silence, reaction. Silence hit harder than any reaction. Because this time, no one could rationalize it. This wasn't strength. This wasn't endurance. This was control. Perfect control. Aftermath. Emotional shift begins. That's, someone started. But didn't finish. The challenger stared at the beam. Then at the human. Waiting for something. A smirk. A comment. A claim of victory. Anything. Instead, the human just said, "That was fun." Fun. The word landed heavier than the performance itself. Key viral mechanic. No ego from the strongest. The challenger's posture shifted. Confusion replacing tension. "You're not even," he stopped. "You're not trying to prove anything, are you?" The human tilted his head. "Should I be?" That question spread through the room like a shockwave. Because it reframed everything. Psychological flip, important turning point. Up until now, the class saw him as a threat, as a competitor, as something to survive. But now, a new possibility entered the narrative. What if he's not here to dominate? Instructor reasserts control. "Enough," the instructor finally said, stepping forward. Not angry, but measured. "We continue the session." The moment broke, but the impact remained. Closing beat of Phase 6. As the class returned, hesitantly, to their positions, the atmosphere had changed again. Less fear, more uncertainty, and something new beneath it. Reluctant curiosity. The challengers stepped back, quieter now. The human returned to his spot like nothing unusual had happened. And yet, everything had changed. Because now they knew two things. He was far beyond them. He wasn't using it against them. And that second part? That was far more unsettling. The challenge ended, but its impact didn't. Even as the class resumed, something subtle had shifted. Not in the human. He was exactly the same. But in everyone else. Residual tension, post-challenge silence. No one spoke much now. The earlier fear had quieted, but it hadn't disappeared. It had evolved. Now it was mixed with something harder to process. Uncertainty. Because the human had just proven, without question, that he could outmatch anyone in the room. And yet, he hadn't acted like it mattered. Trigger event. Someone falls behind. The next exercise began. A paired movement drill, timed coordination between two students. Not difficult, but not easy either, especially after everything that had already happened. One of the smaller students, already shaken, misstepped early. Their rhythm broke. They stumbled. And then, they fell. A sharp sound echoed across the floor. The entire room flinched. Instant reaction, expectation of danger. Several students froze. Others stepped back instinctively. Because now there was a new fear. What would the human do? This was a moment of vulnerability. Weakness. In their minds, this was exactly the kind of situation where a death worlder might assert dominance. Exploit it. Ignore it. Or worse. React unpredictably. The human moves. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate either. He just walked over. Direct. Every eye tracked him. Every movement felt amplified. Key viral moment. Gentle strength. He stopped beside the fallen student. Paused briefly. Then crouched down. "Hey," he said, voice steady. "You okay?" The question itself was disarming. No one expected that. The fallen student blinked, still trying to process what had just happened. I think so." "Don't move too fast," the human added. "You hit pretty hard." Then, carefully, he offered a hand. Not forceful. Not commanding. Just an option. Contrast shock, power versus care. The same hand that had lifted impossible weight. Now moved with extreme precision. Controlled. Gentle. The student hesitated. Not out of fear this time, but disbelief. Then slowly, they took it. Execution. Controlled assistance. The human helped them up. Gradually. Adjusting his grip the entire time. subtly compensating so there was no strain, no imbalance. It was so precise, it almost looked practiced, like he had done this many times before. "You good?" he asked again. A nod. "Yeah, I'm okay." "All right," he said, stepping back immediately. No lingering. No attention-seeking. No follow-up dominance. Just done. Reaction wave, emotional flip begins. The silence that followed was different from before. Less fear. More confusion. He'd helped. Why would he? He didn't have to. Across the room, students exchanged uncertain glances. Because this didn't match the narrative they had built in their heads. At all. Micro-behavior that seals the moment. The human didn't stay there. Didn't wait for acknowledgement. Didn't even check if anyone was watching. Simply turned and walked back to his position, stretching his arms slightly, like nothing significant had happened. Key viral mechanic, effortless kindness. That's what made it hit harder. If he had made a big deal out of helping, it would feel strategic, performative. But this felt normal, instinctive. Perspective shift from threat, unknown ally. The challenger from earlier watched closely. His expression had changed again. "You could have finished every challenge alone," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. And now this. For the first time, there was no hostility in his voice. Group realization, slow burn insight. "He's been holding back," someone whispered. "Not just his strength. Everything." That idea spread. Slowly. But once it took hold, it changed everything. Instructor observation, authority confirms it. Even the instructor had noticed. He didn't interrupt. Didn't comment. But his gaze lingered on the human longer than before. Assessing. Re-evaluating. Human remains unchanged, important rule. Meanwhile, the human stretched again and glanced around. "Are we rotating stations again?" he asked casually. Same tone. Same attitude. Like nothing meaningful had just happened. Closing beat of Phase 7. The class resumed. But not the same way as before. Some students stood a little closer. Not far. Not comfortable yet. But closer than before. And no one told them to. Because something had become clear. Not through words, but through action. The strongest person in the room was also the safest. The energy in the room had changed. Not completely. Not comfortably. But noticeably. Residual tension softens. The class continued rotating through stations, but the rigid distance that once surrounded the human had begun to crack. Not vanish. Just loosen. Where students had once kept entire lanes between themselves and him, now it was just a step. Maybe two. No one acknowledged it. But everyone felt it. Trigger. Awkward proximity. At the next station, spacing forced a situation no one had been ready for. The human ended up standing directly beside two other students. Close enough to interact. Close enough to notice things. Close enough that ignoring him would feel unnatural. The two exchanged a quick glance. Silent communication. "You say something." "No, you say something." Neither did. Human breaks the silence. Casual, disarming. The human glanced at the equipment, then at them. "So, how does this one work?" The question was simple, genuine, and completely unexpected. Both students blinked. "You don't know?" one asked. He shook his head. "First time here." That answer hit differently than anything before. Key viral mechanic, power doesn't equal superiority. "You were doing everything perfectly," the other student said cautiously. "I mean, it looked right." "Yeah, but I might be doing it wrong," he replied. "Just because it works doesn't mean it's the way you guys do it." That line landed. Because for the first time, he wasn't the standard. They were. Micro shift, teaching the strongest. One of them hesitated, then, slowly, demonstrated the movement. "Like this," they said, careful, precise. The human watched closely. Nodded. Then copied it. Adjusted. Improved. "Got it," he said. "Thanks." "Thanks." Another unexpected word. Reaction ripple, respect begins. He just asked for help. And listened. He didn't argue. The whispers were quieter now. Less panicked. More thoughtful. Because something fundamental was changing. They were no longer reacting to him. They were interacting with him. Humor trigger, tension break moment. Then it happened. At a nearby station, a familiar figure attempted another exercise. The same student who had issued the earlier challenge. Determined to regain some dignity, he approached a flexible balance apparatus, stepped on, shifted his weight, and immediately lost balance. Arms flailing, posture collapsing. Not catastrophic, not dangerous, but undeniably awkward. Then laughter. For a split second, everyone froze. Old fear patterns kicked in. Is it safe to react? A small sound, a quiet chuckle from across the room, followed by another, and another. Laughter spread. Not cruel, not mocking, just natural. Release tension finally finding a way out. Critical moment, human reaction. All eyes flicked to the human. This mattered. A lot. Would he laugh? Ignore it? Use it to assert dominance? Instead, he stepped forward and offered a hand. But this time, with a grin. Okay, he said lightly, that one's harder than it looks. The fallen student blinked. Then unexpectedly. Yeah, he admitted, accepting the help. It is. Bonding through shared imperfection. That moment did something nothing else had managed to do. It leveled the field. Not physically, but socially. Because now, they had something in common. Failure. And the ability to laugh about it. Group dynamic unlocks. The shift spread quickly. Conversations started, small, hesitant, but real. Hey, how did you do that jump earlier? Wait, your planet really has storms like that? Try this grip, it might help. The human responded to all of it the same way. Open, relaxed, engaged, like he had always belonged there. Key viral mechanic. Humanization through normal behavior. He wasn't dominating conversations, acting superior, drawing attention. He was just participating. And that normalcy, after everything they had seen, felt surreal. Instructor observes the change. From across the room, the instructor watched carefully. Arms crossed. Expression unreadable. But there was something new behind his gaze. Approval. Not of strength, but of integration. Final humor beat, light ending touch. Near the end of the rotation, someone muttered just loud enough to be heard. If this is his warm-up, I don't want to see his actual workout. A few students snorted. One added, too late, we already survived it. The human glanced over. Hey, I was taking it easy, he said. That earned a collective groan. Followed by more laughter. Closing beat of Phase 8. By the time the rotation ended, the room felt different. Not divided anymore. Not unified either. But connected. In a strange, uneven, but genuine way. The fear wasn't gone. But it wasn't leading anymore. Something else was. Curiosity, respect, and just a hint of camaraderie. By the time the final rotation ended, the class was exhausted. Physically, mentally, emotionally. What had started as a routine session had turned into something none of them could have predicted. And yet, it wasn't over. Trigger, the instructor raises the stakes. All right, the instructor called, stepping forward. The tone alone was enough to quiet the room. This is the final exercise. A collective groan echoed across the floor. Not just from fatigue, but from anticipation. Because if everything so far had felt different, then this would decide everything. The ultimate challenge setup. The final circuit, the instructor continued, requires coordination, strength, and timing. He gestured toward a large, multi-stage setup. A weighted carry, a vertical climb, a balance platform finish. Partners will complete it together. You succeed or fail as a team. That last part mattered a lot, because now, this wasn't about individual performance anymore. Pairing tension, strategic choice. Names were called. Pairs formed. The moment. You, the instructor said, looking at the human. The pause. You'll partner with. A name followed. one of the more capable students. Agile, but clearly not on the human's level. They stepped forward slowly, trying to hide the tension. Failing. Pre-challenge exchange, key emotional setup. Hey, the human said casually. We'll be fine. The partner hesitated. You could do this alone. Yeah, he replied. The beat. But that's not the point, right? That line landed quietly, but deeply. Start signal, controlled chaos. The whistle blew, and everything began at once. Other teams struggled immediately. Miscommunication, uneven pacing, failed coordination. But all eyes still drifted back to one pair. Stage 1, strength test, expectation subversion. The weighted carry. The same type of challenge where the human had already shown overwhelming strength. The partner braced, ready to feel useless again. On 3, the human said, we lift together. But you don't need. Together. But not forceful. 1, 2, 3. They lifted. And this time, the human didn't take over. He matched the effort. Perfectly. Adjusting in real time so the weight felt balanced. Controlled. The partner blinked. Actually helping? Key viral mechanic, deliberate limitation. The audience and characters realize. He's not just strong. He can choose how much strength to use. And right now, he's choosing them. Stage 2, agility climb, trust transfer. Next, the vertical wall. Normally, this would favor the partner. Your lead, the human said. No hesitation. No ego. The partner climbed first. Precise. For the first time, they weren't trying to keep up. They were setting the pace. And the human followed. Not overtaking. Not correcting. Just supporting the rhythm. Psychological payoff. From below, others noticed. He's letting them lead. No, he's choosing to. That's harder than just winning. Because now, it wasn't about ability. It was about control, awareness, and intention. Stage 3, final balance, peak moment. The last platform. Unstable. Elevated. Required both partners to synchronize perfectly. Most teams failed here. Shaking. Falling. Restarting. The human stepped onto the platform. Then looked at his partner. Call it, he said. What? You set the timing. The partner froze. I'll mess it up. Then we fix it, he replied simply. Execution, trust plus precision. A breath. It's now. They moved. Shifted weight. Adjusted. A slight wobble. Corrected instantly. Not by overpowering, but by aligning. Balance. And then, stillness. They held it. Perfectly. Silence before impact. The room went quiet again. But not like before. Not fear. Not shock. Something else. Recognition. Completion. Earn victory. The whistle blew. Complete. The instructor's voice cut through the silence. They had finished. But this time, it felt different. Key emotional payoff. The partners stepped off the platform slowly, looking at their own hands. Then at the human. Did that? Yeah, he said, smiling. We did. No correction. No I carried. Shared credit. Group realization, final shift locks in. Across the room, something settled. A conclusion. Not spoken, but understood. He could have dominated every challenge. Proven superiority at every step. But instead, he chose to match, to support, to include. And that was far more impressive. Instructor acknowledgement. Well done, the instructor said. A simple statement, but heavier than anything before. Because this time, it wasn't just about performance. It was about how it was done. Closing beat of Phase 9. As the class slowed to a stop, no one looked at the human with fear anymore. Not even uncertainty. What replaced it was something stronger. Respect. Not for his strength, but for his restraint. The final whistle had already blown. But no one moved. Not immediately. Aftermath silence, emotional cooldown. The room was filled with heavy breathing, scattered exhaustion, and something new settling in the air. It wasn't tension anymore. Not fear either. It was process. Everything that had just happened. The challenges. The imbalance. The unexpected restraint. And most of all, the human. Visual contrast, key ending image. Across the room, students were sprawled across the floor. Some lying flat, staring at the ceiling. Others sitting, too tired to stand. First light humor response. "You call that good?" someone muttered from the floor. Another added, "I think I saw my life flash twice." A weak laugh followed. Then another. And just like that, the tension broke completely. Group humor release, final bonding layer. Even the ones who had been the most afraid earlier joined in. "Next time," one said, still breathing hard, "maybe warn us before you accidentally dominate every exercise." "I wasn't dominating," the human replied. That earned a collective groan. "Oh, come on. You lifted that weight like it was nothing. You crossed the beam in seconds." He scratched the back of his head. "I thought I was going slow." That did it. Laughter spread again. Stronger this time. Because now it wasn't fear-driven. It was shared. Call back to earlier fear, full circle. From above, a voice echoed faintly. "I still think we're all going to die next session." A few students looked up. There he was. Still clinging near the ceiling. Watching. Unconvinced. The human glanced up. Grinned. "Nah," he said. "You'll be fine." The pause. Then someone from below called out. "Easy for you to say." More laughter. Instructor closure. Authority confirms shift. "Enough," the instructor said, though there was no real edge to it this time. Session complete. No one rushed out. Not like usual. Normally, they would have scattered the moment they were dismissed. They lingered. Subtle social shift, important ending detail. A few students approached the human. Carefully. But not fearfully. "So, that running thing you did earlier. How do you not get tired? Is that normal where you're from?" He answered every question the same way. Casual. Honest. Open. Like none of this was unusual. Key viral mechanic. Mystery remains. Because even after everything, they still didn't fully understand him. And that was important. The story doesn't explain everything. It leaves room for curiosity. Final exchange, emotional anchor. The partner from the final challenge stepped up. Hesitated. And said, "Hey, thanks." The human looked confused for a second. For what? For not just doing it alone. A small pause. A simple answer. That wouldn't have been as fun. That line settled quietly, but deeply. Last group beat, collective acceptance. As students finally began to leave, the distance between them had changed completely. No one avoided him now. Some walked beside him. Others glanced back, not in fear, but in thought. Final viral line, hook ending. As the room emptied, the voice from above echoed one last time. "Next session is strength training, right?" The pause. Multiple groans from below. And the human? He just smiled. Nice. Fade out feeling. No grand finale. No dramatic speech. A shift. From fear, respect, connection. And one lingering thought in everyone's mind. Maybe having him here isn't a bad thing. A few still catching their breath, limbs shaking. And then, there was him. Standing. Stretching casually. Like this had been a light session. Micro detail that reinforces the gap. He rolled his shoulders. Exhaled. "Good workout," he said. Workout. A few heads turned slowly. Expressions somewhere between disbelief and amusement.